Hey folks, Tom Norfleet with www.citizenshipquickly.com. One of the biggest questions I have coming up is when people buy in the country of St. Kitts, whether they do it for citizenship purposes, property getting the citizenship and with a real estate option, or whether they're just buying property outside of citizenship. I try to instruct them and tell them that there's several things that you need to look for, and a lot of them don't look for these things ahead of time, and they end up building a house or buying a house, and they end up just regretting some of their decisions. So I'm going to tell you some things that you need to plan ahead of time, if you're buying property in St. Kitts, so when you go in and buy, you'll look back and say, boy, I'm glad I made these decisions that Tommy talked about. Let me go over a few with you, and these are things that I've noticed in the past, mistakes people have made. First of all, St. Kitts, when you go there, it's one of the prettiest countries in the world. I've been all over the world, and I'll tell you something, the views there are killer views. And the pollution, which I've mentioned in another video, is the second lowest. There was an actual analysis done on countries and their pollution level, and it was the second lowest pollution level of any country in the world. And I can tell a huge difference when I go back to St. Kitts when I'm abroad. Just the air quality, as soon as I get off the plane on the tarmac and walk off, the air quality is so much different than any country I've been to. It's always just like zero air pollution. It's incredible. But the thing I would look for is, first of all, is getting either a house built or buying a property that is that's got fantastic ocean views. The reason I say that, I see so many people go out and they'll buy these lots that they think are real cheap prices. I had a friend that bought at a real cheap price, but then when he turned around and resold it, he had to sell at an incredibly cheap price. In fact, he's still trying to sell it. Why? Because it had no view of the ocean at all. That's why he got it at a steal, and now he's trying to sell it at a steal. I would tell you, first of all, if you're going to buy something, buy it with killer views of the ocean, okay? Or some sort of killer view. The ocean is the best. That's what most people are looking for. It doesn't have to be right on the ocean front. In fact, I'll be honest with you, I really don't like being on the ocean front because you have a lot of sandblast, and you have things that wear out quicker. And I'll be honest with you, the views are not as good as if you're high up and actually off the ocean and back a ways. And plus, when hurricanes come, if you're higher up, you don't have to worry about, you might have wind, but you won't have water type damage from water coming up from the ground. So, these are things you ought to be looking for. And my first priority would tell you to get nice ocean views that are up high versus ocean front. If you're going to get ocean front, that's fine, but you need to understand you're going to have more wear and tear. I would not be buying houses, even at steals, if they don't have good views, okay? Because people are going to come in and they're going to think just like you. They're going to be looking for properties that have really good killer views. That's what they're going to be looking for. And there's too many properties in St. Kitts that have those views. So you're even competing with that because the views are they're killer views. So you have to deal with that. So if you're buying a lot that's selling at a cheap price with no views, you're going to have a hard time selling it. So that's one thing I would be looking for there. I would also be buying, whenever you buy in emerging market countries, and St. Kitts is an emerging market country, real estate in emerging markets, along with equities, which are like stocks, typically go up when the dollar falls. Okay, I've seen it happen in St. Kitts this way. I saw it happen in Panama that way. Okay, so typically when the dollar is high, then your market of people buying the properties in St. Kitts are actually going to be lower. So you're going to be more in a buyer's market, not a seller's market. And let me tell you why that is. The EC dollar, which is the Eastern Caribbean Union dollar, is Eastern Caribbean dollar is tied to the U.S. dollar, and the exchange rate is 2.7 to the U.S. dollar. Since it doesn't float, it's tied to the dollar. When the dollar goes down, then the EC dollar is going down with it. Okay, so if you're from the United States, you won't see really any difference because you're buying the U.S. dollar that's tied to the EC dollar. So there's no really discount when the EC or the U.S. dollar drops because you're in the currency of the U.S. dollar. Where there's a huge difference is when the dollar falls, and people from Europe and places, in emerging market type countries that have a floating currency that go up as the dollar goes down. Then, like for instance, the euro or the pound sterling. I remember when the pound sterling was like you could get $2.10 of U.S. dollars for £1 sterling. Now it's like 130, 1.30. So it's the bargains for people from UK is not like it was several years back when the pound was like 210 to the dollar. So what you have to do is you have to look. What you really want to do is to be buying when the dollar is high, because that's when the sales opportunities are out there, because it's a real buyer's market. Once it hits a seller's market, which is when the dollar plummets, because remember, when the dollar plummets, the euro, pound sterling go up against the dollar, then it's a lot cheaper for people from Germany, France, and the Canadian dollar is going up against the U.S. dollar. Is cheaper for Canadians because they have a floating currency of their own currency, the Canadian dollar, and the pound sterling. Once that goes up, they could be buying it 30, 40, 50% less, maybe even more, on those properties than they could months before. So, and what that does is it causes a chain reaction, because then the properties start to be bought, and then when these people sell locally in St. Kitts, a lot of times they don't take the money and go outside, then they buy another property. So it causes another chain of events of that person that just sold their property buying another property, and now it's cheaper for foreigners abroad to buy. So you get this rapid chain of properties being sold. The key is to be in the St. Kitts market before that happens. Okay. Now, I can't tell you exactly where the dollar. I mean, I can tell you. You can look and see where the dollar is in relation to the euro. I think we've already started in that process. I think the dollar has already peaked. Okay, and you can look at a chart. You can pull up Yahoo Currency Converter. You can look at the comparison of when the dollar peaked against the euro or the pound sterling. I think it peaked probably in the low 20s with the pound sterling. I don't think you're going to see that hit again in this cycle, which means we're probably in that market right now. So if you're looking for a deal, right now is a good time to be doing it, because once we dig in deep in that and we go several years out, then that frenzy starts, and then you see the property prices really start to go up in St. Kitts. This is what happened from about I'd say around 2000 to 2010, right in there. We had a huge run up in the market in St. Kitts. And I think we're going to be hitting that next period when this occurs too. But like I say, the bargains are when the dollar is up, and that's where we're at right now. So if you're looking to get a steal, that's the best time to do it. One other thing too is if you buy, I would stick with resorts. Let me tell you why. If you get with resorts that are especially planned unit developments, you don't have problems with roosters. And remember, this is not the USA, okay? Most places in the United States, you can't have roosters in the city limits. You get outside the US, I'm in the Philippines right now. I've been to 5 hotels, okay? I'm not talking about houses, I'm talking about hotels. Every hotel I've been to has got roosters. You can hear them outside, even with the friggin' air conditioning on and earplugs in, okay? And some of these roosters sound like they got microphones in their mouth. I mean, the noise is enormous. And some of these places, see, they fight roosters here. It's legal to fight roosters. And they have more people fighting them than they do eating them. So every brother, sister, and first cousin's got roosters here. They're all over the place. Okay, when you get outside the U.S. and places that don't look at roosters the same way, in the U.S., I think most states it's against the law. I think the whole U.S. is against the law to fight them. It's a big time event in Philippines, and everybody's got them. And a lot of places don't have the restrictions on roosters. Now, in the resort areas, you can't have roosters. And certain developments, you can't even have dogs unless you keep them inside. Now, you might say, well, I got a dog, I don't like that. Well, I can tell you this, if you've got a house and you got a dog that barks every time a pin drops, okay, and it keeps you up half the night, you will be concerned with it, okay? And police don't come out for disturbances, disturbing the peace in these emerging market countries like they do in the U.S. or Europe or some of these other places. So you have to go to areas where the control is not with the government, it's with the development and the contracts that the owners sign. So what that does is it controls the owners from bringing in dogs or renting out to people that have dogs that bark all night long. And forget roosters, you're not going to see those in the resorts and planned unit developments. When you get outside those planned unit developments, you might be buying cheap, but I'm going to tell you something, you're going to pay a price for it. The guy across the street could have a refrigerator out front, 2 or 3 cars with the wheels off in the front of the yard, and then when you try to resell it, foreigners coming in with money, they're not going to buy there. Okay, so you bought cheap, now you're going to sell cheap. That's what I would be looking for. Okay, so you want to get in areas that are nice. Look for good deals in the resort areas if you're going to be buying. Don't be going in these other areas, because remember, the laws with the police controlling noise, okay, is different in these areas than it is in the U.S. and other areas. You could complain through the roof and nothing gets done. You need to have it in the contracts where the developments are to control that. Otherwise, you could have a nightmare. And also you need security, good security too, to keep from, if you're gone for months at a time, you want to make sure that the place is secure. And if you're buying houses that don't have good walls around them, and even walls won't do a lot because someone needs to be in those homes when you're gone. So you're really better off having areas that are planned unit developments. It's more control for security purposes. You can sleep better with the windows open. I don't like AC. I never use air conditioners in my house, and it saves me a fortune because the electricity units are a lot higher, in St. Kitts. But when you don't use AC, and I don't even use hot water. The reason is I use my cold water as an AC unit. It keeps me cool. Never had a need for AC because it stays so nice in St. Kitts all year round. My utility bill when I'm in my house, no joke, people don't believe this, it runs me about, I would say around 30 to 50 US dollars per month max. Okay, and that's all year round because I don't use heating and I don't use air conditioning. That's that's how perfect the weather is in St. Kitts. You won't find any places like that. Even in Florida, it's too hot in the summer, and sometimes it gets too cold in the winter, depending on where you're at, where you have to use some sort of heat. Depends on which part of Florida you're in. St. Kitts, you don't have that. Okay, you can go with that heat or AC all year round, and that's the thing that's real nice. Plus, if you have your house up high, your chances of needing AC drop dramatically because of the breeze. Okay, that's the key about being up high in a place like St. Kitts, and you can literally go all year round with that breeze and have your windows open. And right now, the place I'm living in is the quietest place I've ever lived in my whole life. All I hear is the waves in the distance breaking. It's beautiful, and you don't have to worry about polluted air. You can keep your windows open. It's really nice for that. So keep in the resorts because people they have to keep their place painted, or if the development paints it, they'll keep everything nice and clean, and you don't have to worry when you're trying to resell it. That's the basic thing to look for. And one other thing too, if you're getting ready to build, one thing I would tell you to do that a lot of people don't think about is if you always get a house built where it's on where the lot is on a slant. In other words, here's the slant of the lot. Okay, you should have your house up on the high. So if your lot's going like this, and you want your house to be coming straight off, and let's say somebody's behind you here, you want your house to be coming off that lot like this. The reason you want that is you want to be on the highest part of your lot line because the guy that's in front of you, he's actually down here somewhere. Okay, if you got your lot flat, okay, if the lot in front of you is empty, okay, after your house is built, you're going to have a real surprise when somebody builds in the front. Because if it's not at a slant where he's below you, now he's going to block your view, and when you resell, man, it's going to be really difficult to do it. Okay, And also your drainage is real good too because everything's floating down. But you need to make sure that you always build in the highest part of your lot line, and because it's it's way up above the houses in front of you that's going to be built. Or if it's already built, that's fine. You can see, where you're at. But still, I would not be building at the front part of your lot line here, even if somebody's in the front, because what happens if this guy builds up in front of you? You see what I'm saying? So you always want to be at the back part of your lot and then build up this way. This way you can maximize your cost as far as square footage, because the more you go up, the more square footage you got, the more cost it's going to cost you for what you're looking for. So I hope that helps you there. Also, one thing you can look for too is always buy too. Most people don't realize this until after they buy. If you're buying, try to buy where the telephone lines are actually behind you instead of front of you. Okay, because this way you're not really seeing the telephone poles. That's another added plus. Something else too that you want to look at is the people who are going to be buying your house in St. Kitts. The people that are coming in and putting money are going to be mostly foreigners that come in. Locals, there are some wealthy wealthy locals, but most of the people that have wealth in St. Kitts are foreigners that came in from outside. Okay, and most foreigners will not buy in areas that are outside resorts. So if you try to sell and you're trying to buy outside the resorts, you're not going to have anybody but most cases locals that are buying from you, and most of them don't have money, so you're not going to get much for your house as far as appreciation goes. So you really need to stick to these type rules when you're looking at and buying areas that foreigners and locals will buy, and not just where locals will buy. I hope this helped you today. If you got a question or comment, just put it below. Also, if you want new videos as they come out, just hit the subscribe button to the right of your screen, and we'll get that out to you as soon as they come out. And look forward to talking to you on the next video. Take care. Bye.